Okay, hello everyone. I see that we have participants in the room. It's tricky because you don't see the participants, you just see the numbers. So, all right, well, I am here with Dr. Una Malcolm, and oh, there's still a few people in the lobby. Thank you, Stephanie. So, I'm just going to give it a few more seconds before I start my introduction. Yeah. I'm just going to wait for the numbers to stop moving so quickly. That'll tell us that the group
The things
has
are stable.
settled.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, don't worry, Julie. I think it might be just how it's set up. I know I do always look for people's faces, though. It's nice to see people's
I
faces,
know
but we
that's
know
the
you're there.
tricky part.
Yeah, we know you're there.
Yeah. I know. No cameras and no sound. I'm sorry. All the sessions were like this. It's standard because the sessions are recorded. So thank you for being here, everyone. We know you're there because we see the numbers. We're just giving a few more minutes for people to settle in. So we're reaching the end of our day. It's been a terrific day for me and for many others. The feedback has really been great. Joanna, do you suggest we continue to wait?
I think we're good to go.
We're good to go. Okay, perfect. So I would like to introduce Dr. Malcolm. Una is the Chief Academic Officer at Dyslexia Canada, and she's a respected literacy advocate and educational leader. She's recognized for her influential role in advancing evidence-based reading instruction across Canada. She's been instrumental in shaping national conversations around literacy, working closely with educators like us, with policymakers, and with families to promote equitable, research-informed practices that support all learners. Among her accomplishments, she contributed significantly to the landmark work of the Right to Read report, which called for widespread adoption of structured literacy and early screening practices. She's worked tirelessly. If you follow Dyslexia Canada on Instagram, you will see that it's nonstop advocacy work, including, at some of our own school boards and supporting us with our initiatives at our boards. So I'm honored to have you here, Una, and welcome. And I now turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much for that incredible welcome, and thank you so much for this opportunity to join you all on such a wonderful day of incredible speakers and really rich opportunities for digging deep into such an important topic, instruction. And as I just get my screens organized, I just have a few brief slides to close out your day. There we go. I think that's now visible. Recognizing I'm coming in just to hopefully pull together some key ideas that some of your speakers earlier today planted, really connecting to that element of instruction being such a powerful opportunity for raising reading outcomes and supporting all of our students' right to learn to read. And my hope is to give you just a bit of a national perspective, highlighting some of the important work that's been happening in this space. So, with this context, right, you've got it's a long story with a lot of work happening. But really to understand this need to think about our connection of practice in schools and classrooms with research, we need to acknowledge the fact that we're working in a space with a really long, complicated history of attitudes and opinions about how we're teaching children to learn to read, right? This is something where there is a long history at play. And I certainly won't go into depth, but on the whole, our approach to teaching, students foundational literacy skills has varied over time. So we can think about, whole word approaches that are teaching students to memorize words as whole units. We can think about whole language, that perspective of immersing students into authentic literature with the thought that that will be what will support students in developing those early skills, and then sort of seeing that shift and evolve into balanced literacy. But, as we think about the shifts in practice and sort of how these guiding philosophies have been downloaded and implemented in classrooms, a common thread really is that idea that research-based practices may not necessarily have been in place for all children to have the access to the instruction that we know they need. And this is something where, we see this across provinces and territories in Canada. We see it far beyond that, well beyond Canada. But if we think about that, there are impacts to, potentially not aligning our instruction to what we know best about how we can teach kids to read. And if we think about how we're doing, these data come from an international assessment called PISA. It's an assessment that's done every couple of years with 15-year-olds. And you can see that almost 20% of teens from Quebec scored below the level necessary of what the OECD highlights as necessary to participate in the modern economy. And to be fair, I pulled out Quebec's data because I'm speaking with you today, but it's a common trend across many provinces and territories that we're not seeing, our students build those foundational skills that lets them access all the benefits that literacy affords the way we would want for everybody. And this has consequences. We know that literacy is tied to so many benefits. It's tied to economic outcomes, health and socio-emotional outcomes as well. We want strong literacy skills for our students as individuals, but then we also recognize this idea that a more literate society is a happier, healthier, and more prosperous one. But what I will highlight, this idea of 19% of students, having difficulty with those skills we know are necessary to be strong readers, it doesn't need to be like this. So you'll notice the citation on this paper, it's from 2003. This is Canadian research from the North Vancouver District School Board in BC. And this was some really interesting research that follows students through early intervention in foundational skills. So students were assessed in kindergarten for an indicator of whether they were at risk for difficulty learning to read. And you'll see that around 23% of students were at risk. Across those early primary years, students were given phonological awareness instruction, phonics instruction, and we see by the time those same students reach the end of grade 2, a dramatic decrease in difficulty in reading. So we see that really clearly, a reduction in reading difficulty for these children. Now, a bit of an aside, the context of that school district was highly, highly, highly diverse. So researchers pulled apart and sort of isolated out the data for multilingual learners because there was a very high proportion of language learners in that board. So you'll see a similar pattern at the beginning, but with higher risk. You can see 37% of those emergent bilingual students were at risk at the beginning of kindergarten, so 37% compared to 23. But we see that same pattern emerging through strong instruction that dramatically decreases for students. These are these same students from kindergarten walking through until the end of grade 2, and they actually closed a bigger gap. So for me, this takeaway really highlights that our instruction is a powerful opportunity to change trajectories for students. There are many factors that we can't change within our school system. There are many things that are not alterable factors, but instruction is well within our control. It's an alterable factor that can dramatically change students' lives. And I always try to highlight the voice of students, the voice of a child. This is the perspective of a student with pervasive reading difficulties. She has very significant dyslexia, very significant reading-based learning disability. And learning to read has been incredibly difficult for this child. You can still see it in her spelling. But learning to read has changed her life, which she really voices here. This was when she was in grade 6. This was unassisted, as you can tell by her spelling. She's now in grade 9 and is doing quite well and is successful and is doing wonderfully. But what let this happen, this trajectory for this student, came on the backs of tens of thousands of dollars of private tutoring, tremendous parent advocacy, an incredible amount of resources being, invested into this child. And it's something where, while it worked out for this student, yes, Stephanie, I see your emoji, and I too share that. While it worked out for this student, this is a huge equity issue. This really, really matters that we're not necessarily within our public system for some students able to provide them that support that they need to realize their right to learn to read. And this is a human right. This has been established by the Supreme Court of Canada. It's beyond the scope of what we can talk about today, but I would highly recommend, if you're interested in this, to dig into it. It's the 2012 decision, the Jeffrey Moore decision, Jeffrey Moore is now an adult, but at the time was a student in British Columbia. And the case was escalated all the way up to the Supreme Court, who clearly established that students have a right to receive effective reading instruction at school. And this decision really has impacted provincial human rights commissions. You'll see I've got this here on the Ontario Right to Read report, which was launched in 2019, which investigated policy and practice into several key benchmarks and had very strong conclusions about how there were systematic failures in our system which had clear impacts on students' ability to realize that right to learn to read. Just for interest's sake, we now are operating in a space where there are 2 additional provincial human rights commissions who have launched and completed similar inquiries, one in Saskatchewan and one in Manitoba, and really similar threads emerging in terms of key themes of what those commissions have identified in terms of how our system is teaching reading and how we're intervening when reading is difficult. Now, in response to this work, right, in response to both in provinces that have had commission inquiries, there's been work, but also broadly speaking, those inquiries have impacted policy and practice well beyond that specific province. So that's something where it really has been a catalyst across the country. So there is big work happening, which is exciting. British Columbia has been doing a lot of work in terms of shifting their curriculum. They have a new document connected to foundational skills and will be investing heavily in screening. Alberta has been leading this work. They have been the first province to shift their curriculum and to implement screening actually in literacy and in numeracy. Saskatchewan, as I mentioned, did also do an inquiry into literacy on the basis of a complaint from several families with similar conclusions, similar to Manitoba. And Ontario, in light of the Ontario Human Rights Commission's report, there have been shifts to the provincial curriculum, the kindergarten curriculum, and universal screening kindergarten to grade 2. And we see similar patterns in the Atlantic provinces, Nova Scotia screening as well with an early intervention policy, shifts to their curriculum, New Brunswick as well. So this is something where this important work around looking at how we're teaching foundational skills and how we're supporting students with evidence-based instruction is a national conversation now. And with these changes, there's big work to be done. And that's something where, it is something where just highlighting instruction across the country, recognizing I'm pulling a picture there from the First Nations School Board in the Yukon, Evergreen School Division in Manitoba. This is near North District School Board in Ontario. This is a conversation that is happening. It might be slow. What I will highlight is this work happens and this work comes from advocacy. This is something where it's a challenging conversation. These changes are hard and they don't happen without without advocacy and frankly, being a bit of a squeaky wheel. It is something where this work matters, right? I thank you for your work in, advancing your own professional learning, recognizing the importance of meeting every child's right to learn to read. It's of incredible importance, and I thank you for that. This work matters, and we are here to support that work in whatever way we can. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Dyslexia Canada works in this space, both in terms of supporting individual teachers, supporting families, and advocating to change the system to prevent reading difficulties for as many children as we can. So I see some comments in the chat. Yes, it is something where, these shifts to instruction, they are big things, and it is something where continued advocacy is necessary to ensure that we're structuring our systems in a preventative way to meet all children's needs. So thank you so much for your time today. I will stop sharing and just so appreciative of your work today, and happy to support this work in whatever way we can.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I mean, some of this is hard to hear. We saw some comments in the chat, but today I feel we have the tools, and you've reminded us of, and this gives me goosebumps every time, that we can actually prevent reading difficulties. That power is in our hands as the school system. So thank you for that reminder. Thank you for the overview of what's happening across Canada. And I hope that fuels us and gives us renewed momentum to keep working at this and keep moving the dial. We know better now. We're doing better. We still have a ways to go, but thank you for everything you do. And I know that you've been involved in all of these provinces, so there are no words for the appreciation that we all have for you. Thank you for closing this day. I certainly feel like I have a lot of energy now. Not sure where this is going to go, but we're all going to do something together. Thank you, everyone. The thank yous are just pouring in, Dr. Malcolm. So let's just take those in a little
Thanks so
bit,
much,
because
everybody.
it's fantastic. So grateful for the work that you do. A million
And
thank yous.
well, I see some thank yous to the organizers of today. I know how challenging it is to orchestrate such a big event with so many different pieces coming together. So a big thank you to the organizers today, because it's a tall order to pull something off at this scale.
Absolutely. I